West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Chef Justice Putnam. Netrootsradio.com.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est long, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
Let's begin by going behind the scenes of Fox's surprise ouster of Lou Dobbs. It's not cancel culture here, it is consequence culture. What are the consequences for riling up people with reckless lies about a democracy that most Americans cherish? Well, lately there have not been many consequences, but maybe that's changing. Maybe. The pro-Trump love-in, the lie fest known as Lou Dobbs Tonight, was canceled on Friday, one day after Dobbs was singled out in a $2.7 billion lawsuit from the voting tech company Smartmatic. The company alleges that Fox and Dobbs and Sidney Powell and Rudy Giuliani all waged a disinformation campaign against the company in a desperate bid to keep Trump in power. There are other lawsuits coming too. And we're going to get to those in a little bit with a spokesman for another company that was smeared by the likes of Dobbs. But here's the thing. Yeah, Dobbs is off the air, but Jeanine Pirro was named in the Smartmatic lawsuit too. So was Maria Bartiromo. And as you can see, they were both on the air, back on the air this weekend. Fox is vowing to fight the Smartmatic lawsuit. And I'm told that the plan to cut Dobbs loose was in the works before Smartmatic filed in court. So then why was Dobbs dismissed? Why isn't Fox explaining it? What does this tell us about Fox's direction in the post-Trump age? What pressure is Fox feeling from networks like Newsmax? And how significant could all these lawsuits potentially be? I have four great guests standing by with answers. So let's begin with David Folkenflik. He's the media correspondent for NPR News. He's been all over this story. And Dana Young, she's a professor of communications and political science at the University of Delaware. David, why was Lou Dobbs canceled on Friday night?
Well, it wasn't ratings. I mean, the man was among the leaders for the Fox Business Network. Fox officials are telling me, I'm sure they're telling you, hey, look, we announced in October we were going to make a bunch of changes. This is just one of them. Yet it happened very abruptly, not a seamless handoff. I think that you saw a guest host sit in on Thursday night saying you'll see Lou tomorrow, and you sure didn't see Lou Dobbs Friday night. And it was, as you pointed out in your introduction, just 24 hours or so after this filing of this $2.7 billion with a B billion-dollar lawsuit, right? Dobbs, it seems to me, was in some ways the avatar of this, what should be a scandal for Fox News. They ran these crazy little corrective, 2.5-minute correctives, in a sense, on Dobbs' show and Pirro's show and Bartiromo's show, which viewers would have been hard-pressed to make any sense of as a fact check because it never referred to Fox or its previous reporting. And in addition, this reminds me a little bit, to be honest, of the way in which scandals were handled at Rupert Murdoch's news tabloids in London. You and I had to cover it about a decade ago, right, where what they would do is they would throw somebody over the side and see if that was enough. And it seems to me that this is an effort to cauterize the wound, to distance Fox from this feverish conspiracy theory with consequences, as opposed to so many of the conspiracy theories that are ventilated on Fox that might not play out this severely. this really did have a severe and deleterious effect on the American public's understanding of the election that just happened, and influenced, in some regard, the way in which people arrived at those protests on January 6th. I think that it's going to be hard for Smartmatic to prove that there was a correlation legally, but it doesn't mean there isn't a journalistic obligation for Fox to try to handle that in a responsible way, which they sure didn't do.
And your point about News of the World and what happened in Murdoch's British tabloids, it does seem like a similarity here. Your book about that, Murdoch's World, is an essential read, by the way. Just want to make people know they can order it on Amazon. Dana, here's what I kind of see going on. Tell me if I'm crazy about this, okay? In the reality-based community, right, Biden is president, Trump is off in exile in Mar-a-Lago, pretty much silent. And yet the Trump fan base wants to watch shows that tell them unreality, that tell them a fantasy about how Biden stole the election and how Democrats are evil. And so there's the real market demand for shows like Lou Dobbs. And yet, shows like Lou Dobbs can also get you into legal jeopardy. They can also cause advertisers to flee because they don't want to be associated with the nonsensical content that's going to embarrass their brands. So there's this tension between what the audience, the right-wing audience wants, and what networks are going to give them versus what's actually in the business interests of those networks. Am I getting that right?
Yeah, first of all, you're not crazy.
Okay.
Second of all, in terms of the source of this demand, where does the demand come from in the first place? Is it organic demand on the part of these viewers? Or is this demand that has resulted from the cultivation of this sort of distrust that has happened over the last several decades? Also, I just want to say lawsuits have a way of forcing people and entities to reckon with empirical fact and reality, because the judicial system is predicated on evidence, empirical, verifiable reality. And when you're looking at the conservative media ecosystem, their sort of dominant lens is one that's driven kind of by truthiness and intuition and gut and what feels right. And they're able to sort of cloak themselves in the First Amendment, right, freedom of speech. And because these programs are opinion and analysis shows that, by the way, Fox does everything that it can to try to hide that fact from the viewers. Viewers would be hard-pressed to recognize the distinction between the analysis programming and the news programming. And journalism as a profession has reputational and professional norms that are self-corrective in a way that outrage and opinion programming does not.
Right. That's absolutely right. Look at what happened on Fox's opinion shows the other night. There was this ceremony at the Capitol for the slain U.S. Capitol police officer. MSNBC and CNN were showing it live, of course, because that's what all television networks would do, news networks would do. And Fox just stuck with its hardcore right-wing talk and just barely dipped in for a few seconds when Biden was there to pay his respects. But these are not choices of a news network. These are, David Folkenflik, it occurs to me that Fox News is afraid of the news. Like, they're avoiding the news. They don't want to cover the news because their viewers don't want to hear it or don't want to see it, even when it's about a police officer.
I think that you basically got that right. They may have dipped into that, but not in the way that other news networks did.
Right.
I think that, what you're seeing is Fox is being led by its viewers right now. It doesn't have a clear sense of how it wants to operate in the post-Trump world when Trump still commands so much loyalty from its core viewers. Right. And I think what you're really seeing is a dangerous element where Fox isn't in control. It has yielded so much of its news program to its opinion hosts and opinions anyways, fusing them with segments from some of their most outspoken figures in its way of kind of serving up red meat. And it's to the great frustration of the journalists who remain.
So, Dana, when you heard Marjorie Taylor Greene say the other day that, that she was allowed to believe things that aren't true, that's the entire basis of the wild right-wing media universe. These conspiracy theories and things that aren't true that stick in the minds of tens of millions of people. What can we learn from psychology about the power of these conspiracy theories?
So recognize that her language, when she said, I was allowed to, before she said that, right before she said, because I was upset about things and didn't trust the government, because people here were not doing the things they should be doing. The problem with that is I was allowed to believe things that weren't true. Now, let's talk for a second about she didn't trust the government, didn't trust the media. She deals with those things as factual and deserved, that they're appropriate responses to her direct experience with the world. And she talks about sort of being maligned for her views. The question I ask you is, what are the dominant themes of Fox News programming? Those are the themes. distrust in media, distrust in the government, and the notion that you, for being conservative and because of your values, are socially maligned and looked at with contempt by the left, by liberals, by media, and by other institutions in the world. So she kind of got close when she talked about this, and those three things really are the special sauce that kicks off an interest in conspiracy theories. Conspiracy theories are really tempting for individuals who have this sort of need to understand the world in a gut-driven way. If they're socially maligned, if they distrust institutions in power, and if you consistently reinforce that sense and consistently plant the seeds of distrust by hinting at conspiracy theories, and note that Fox doesn't start them, they simply amplify them. They amplify them. And I guess I just thought it was interesting because when she framed how she ended up becoming curious, it actually was a quite accurate depiction of how it happens. But she didn't quite go far enough in explaining where the roots of that distrust lie. And I would argue that they come through the conservative media ecosystem.
And that's what I want to underscore here. Dobbs is going away. That's one show on one channel. There are many other shows like him. There is no sign that Fox is moving toward the center, back to the kind of the centrist, reality-based middle. No sign of that at all. Dobbs seems like an anomaly, and I think he was partly dismissed just because management had enough of him. They were just tired of his BS, but they've got a lot of other people there selling the same stories. All right, Dana, thank you. Yeah, David, one last thought, yeah.
What I was just going to say was, don't forget, Maria Bartiromo is technically under the news division. I've asked this question repeatedly of Fox. She's supposedly straight news, and yet she's amplifying these conspiracy theories just the same.
Right, and she's named in the Smartmatic suit just like Dobbs.
It is Monday, the 8th of February of 2021, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam. Gunner, the English Bulldog, is our snoozing sous chef. And our daily special is River City Hash Mondays. Oh my, we put what is left over from a fabulous weekend and we repurpose it into a gourmet dish that I'm sure you'll enjoy it. Yeah. Hey, how are you? We got through the weekend and it was rather restful compared to the weekends of the past 4 years. So we got that going for us. Quite nice, wasn't it? Looks like we're going to have an impeachment trial coming this week, I hope. What's up with the Democrats already? They're saying, we got, the Republicans don't like what we're doing. Oh, I guess we should just, hurry this along. So in other words, the Republicans once again are going to be held unaccountable for the crimes that they've committed. I just get so angry. I saw the headline, where, nobody's been arrested for killing those cops at the Capitol. Nobody. And yet they're throwing black people in jail for violating curfew at a protest. Any number of comparisons that you could make. I mean, one of the most obvious to me in this whole thing is Al Franken. Say what you will about Al Franken. Oh, he's a creep. And so what? We ran him out of office. When I say we, I mean the Democratic Party ran him from office for faking that he was going to grope a starlet's breasts while on a USO tour when he was a comedian before he was a senator. But they keep their squeaky Berberts, and they keep their Marjorie Green Q Taylors. They'll even keep their Rand Pauls. What about Ron Johnson? He's a out-and-out traitor in the mold of a Mike Flynn. Goes to Russia on the 4th of July to get feted by Putin for all the great work that he did destroying American democracy. He's on the Sunday shows. And that's another thing that rubs me the wrong way. If the Sunday shows were broadcast back during, our Civil War, I think we would still be a slave nation. Every Sunday show had every Republican who was part of this insurgency making their case to destroy America, and that is the Democrats' fault. It's Nancy Pelosi's fault that there was an insurgency on January 6th. She was the one who ordered them. That wasn't Trump supporters, they are saying. They're now telling us it was Black Lives Matter and Antifa. They are going to just really big lie the big lie now, aren't they? In spite of what the whole world saw, they're going to gaslight us and make us believe those frothing white nationalists. Oh my God. Was Antifa and Black Lives Matter? Just don't call them racist. Don't. Jeez. And so we're going to let them get away with that, apparently. That's the word. Speed it along. We're not going to be able to get a conviction. Oh, we better not call witnesses. So where's the criminal trial then? If we're not going to impeach this fellow, where is the criminal trial? Oh, can't have a criminal trial. He has some sort of implied immunity. An Article 2 in private life. All of the insurgent-minded types out here in the southern part of Oregon who went into hiding, well, at least disappeared from social media. They used to be out there, kicking the libs, putting up the most vile memes, threatening actual violence, and then getting we Democratic liberals suspended from Facebook because we deigned to respond to their violent nature with some sort of nonviolent meme. But we were suspended for harassment or any other number of excuses that they use the algorithm for. Well, they disappeared after January 6th off social media by and large, but they're inching their way back. So, in other words, nothing will change. We're going to be in the same deep water, deep muck that we've always been in because we will not hold them to account. And yet, we'll get rid of our Frankens for faking that he was going to grow up a starlet's tits. I know it's stupid. It was juvenile. But we get rid of those types, and they keep their racists. They keep their fascists. They keep their conspiracy-addled nincompoops. And most of all, they keep their traitors. Ron Johnson, this John Kennedy idiot, and others. Even Rand Paul. Rand Paul went there to get Putin a letter from Trump, and ever since, Rand Paul's been on board with this Vichy collaborating crew as well. It wouldn't surprise me if they're all taking crash courses in Cyrillic. What's on the rest of the menu here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy? Yeah, we had a bit of a long one at the top with Seltzer, but hey, Lou Dobbs was not fired because of cancel culture. Lou Dobbs was fired because of consequence culture. We didn't fire Lou Dobbs. Fox fired Lou Dobbs because money is involved. Maybe we need to get money involved in this impeachment trial. Maybe that's the only way to get impeachment. Have the Republicans suffer some sort of monetary fine. I don't know. We already got Gohmert and a couple of others saying, it doesn't matter. I'll just pay that $5,000 fine. I'm not going to walk through that metal detector. And they say that they are the party of law and order. Yeah, right. Then on the rest of the menu here in the Bistro Cafe part of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, after massive public scorn, parents who opted out of Black history being taught at a Utah Montessori school? And that's a charter school, by the way. Well, those parents have withdrawn their request. Shine a light? Maybe it might work. And here it did. Weary postal workers hope Biden will bring sorely needed change. It'd be nice if we could fire DeJoy, but the only way to do that is to change the board of governors. Yeah. Trump did his best to pretty much hollow out America. And Homeland Security Chief Alejandro Mayorkas has vowed to fight one of the greatest threats to the United States, white nationalist domestic terrorism. Well, good. How about we do the same thing during this impeachment trial? After the break, we move to the chef's table, where the Biden administration has initiated moves to rejoin the UN Human Rights Council. Yeah, Trump took us out of that. Why? Well, he doesn't believe in human rights. And Pope Francis has appointed 2 women to the male-dominated Holy See. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Of our homepage at netrootsradio.com. To the right of the page is our chat room link, and the chat room is monitored by Kelly Lincoln. Thank you, Kelly, for doing so. To the left of the chat room link, near the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, is the link to our Patreon page. If you could afford an espresso-type coffee drink and send those funds to us once a month, we are able to stretch those dollars, and then we are able to pay our bills. And, we do couple that money that we receive from folks like you, and we couple that with money that we pull out of our own wallets. Wow. Who does that? Well, we do, because we have a civic duty. And your generosity helps us fulfill that civic duty, as the founders originally intended. They did. It's even in the mission statement. I don't know what mission along the El Camino Real it is at, but it's a mission statement. Yeah, you'll have to look up to figure that one out. But anyway, your generosity allows us to pay our bills, and then we fly under the radar. And then when we fly under the radar, we are able to continue with our civic duty. And what is that civic duty? Well, here we are. That's right. Afflict the comfortable and comfort the afflicted in our way. So thank you for your generosity in allowing us to do so. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, it is so simple. Tom takes care of it, and you can find Netroots Radio at Netroots Radio. Thank you, Tom. Gunner, the English bulldog, our snoozing sous chef, is snoozing quite loudly. I think you can tell. But he's such an integral part of, the kitchen here. We just let him do what he does best. Okay, if you would like to follow the show on Twitter, do so at Cookbook West, and pick up podcasts by way of Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, and wherever podcasts can be found. Oh, I am not going to mention the football game yesterday. A lot of people said that there were too many people in the stands. Well, actually, a lot of those were cutouts. I was a little upset that the few people who were there, I think there was like 20-some thousand, there were a lot of people that were closer than 6 feet. Okay, I'm just saying. Come on. And, on further review, as I thought about the weekend's halftime show, actually wasn't so bad. It was an homage to the Muppets of Sesame Street, and an homage to Spinal Tap, and I guess a lot of people didn't get it right away. But like any good book or movie or any great story, when you go back over it again, read it again, watch it again, now it becomes a bit more clear. So a lot of people said the weekend was boring. Actually, during it wasn't so boring. I will admit, I recognize that I am now getting old because, it seemed like a lot of synth pop from the 80s. And it was, because they were covering Susie and the Banshees. I said, wow, they're covering Susie and the Banshees. That's pretty, I didn't expect to see that during the halftime show. So, yeah, I think The Weeknd did a better halftime show than people are giving him credit for. I still think Whitney Houston's Star Spangled Banner national anthem is still the best in the national anthem realm of the Super Bowl. So, Tom Brady won again. Good for him. All right. Everybody wants to know, is he the greatest athlete in the world? Well, I think Serena Williams might be tops on that. Okay. Jim Thorpe, too. But, currently, Serena Williams. She has a lot more titles and been to the Olympics 4 times, too. Try doing that 4 times every 4 years, and she did it 4 times. Yeah, I think she might be right up there in the pantheon of the greatest athletes of all time. Okay. Right up there with Jim Thorpe, if you want my opinion. Tom Brady, he's not even in the top 30. Jeez. Just because he's able to take instructions from the sidelines and run a play. Yeah, please. Okay, enough of that. Let's get into this first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. It comes out of the Associated Press by, the anonymous staff at the Associated Press. Parents who sought to opt out their children from learning Black History Month curriculum at a charter school in northern Utah have withdrawn their requests. Maria Montessori Academy in North Ogden experienced a public backlash after announcing plans to make participation optional. We regret that after receiving requests, an opt-out form was sent out concerning activities planned during this month of celebration. A statement from Academy Director Mika Hirakawa and the school's board of directors said, "We are grateful that families that initially had questions and concerns have willingly come to the table to resolve any differences, and at this time, no families are opting out of our planned activities, and we have removed this option." Well, why did you have it there for the first place? Because some parents wanted to make Black History Month the new sex ed? I don't want my kids learning about sex ed. I don't want my kids learning about slavery. School officials said a few families requested the exemption from the instruction, but declined to say how many or specify the reasons given because they're bigots. Come on. Betty Sawyer, head of the Ogden chapter of the NAACP, said she contacted the school on Saturday morning about the decision to make Black History Month curriculum optional. Data from the Utah State Board of Education shows that only 3 of the Academy's 322 students are black, while 70% are white. Well, why would white people want to learn about black history? Hirakawa wrote on the school's Facebook page Friday that he reluctantly issued a letter explaining families are allowed to exercise their civil rights to not participate in Black History Month at the school. Really? They have the civil right? The Facebook page appeared to have been removed on Saturday. In future, the school plans to handle parental concerns on an individual basis, Hirakawa said. Discussions held with the parents will not result in a change to the Black History Month curriculum, which is based on Black history instruction using state social studies standards, Hirakawa said. Hirakawa, who is of Asian descent, said the social media post went against his personal beliefs as the great-grandson of people sent to a Japanese internment camp. I personally see a lot of value in teaching our children about the mistreatment, challenges, and obstacles that people of color in our nation have had to endure, and what we can do today to ensure that such wrongs don't continue, Hirakawa said. Now, I realize he's only the director of one charter school in the Montessori system in Utah. Maybe one way to mitigate this is just to make these special instructions part of the regular curriculum so that during Black History Month, the month can truly be celebratory and back up instruction that's already gone on throughout the rest of the year. David Sharp from the Associated Press brings us this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. The U.S. Postal Service's stretch of challenges did not end with the November general election and tens of millions of mail-in votes. The pandemic-depleted workforce fell further into the hole during the holiday rush, leading to long hours and a mountain of delayed mail. Postmaster General Louis DeJoy has vowed to make improvements after facing withering criticism and calls for his removal for his actions that slowed delivery of mail before the election. Some critics had hoped that President Joe Biden would fire DeJoy, but a president cannot do that. Instead, Biden could and likely will use appointments to reshape the Board of Governors, which meets tomorrow, Tuesday, for the first time since his election. It's unclear how swiftly Biden's administration will move. A White House spokesperson declined to comment on upcoming appointments. Mark Diamondstein, president of the American Postal Workers Union, said he's hoping for some bold appointments by Biden. We want a board of governors that understands fundamentally this is not called the United States postal business, he said. It's not a profit-making business. It's here to serve the people. That's why it's the Postal Service. And how about this pre-funding for a retirement package 70 years into the future for employees that are not even born yet? How about stopping that? A change in tone, at least, would be welcomed by postal workers after former President Donald Trump. I guess we can use the P word when it's former. Well, I'm going to have to look at the Netroots Radio Style Manual. Well, when I say look at it, I mean edit it. And he had called the Postal Service a joke last year and criticizing business practices that led to a growing operating deficit. Never once did Trump mention about the pre-funding aspect of this ridiculous retirement program. They had to do this. Not only did they have to fund it 70 years in the future, they had to do it in 10 years. It's stupid. It's a way of getting rid of the postal union because they're a public union. And if they can get rid of the Postal Service too and farm it out to UPS and FedEx, except UPS and FedEx use the USPS because they're already got the infrastructure to get the last mile. Sometimes even more than the last mile. Now, despite the pandemic, on-time rates for first-class mail topped 90% for most of the year until DeJoy took office in June and began instituting changes that raised concerns about the delivery of mail-in election ballots. Workers decried DeJoy for limiting overtime and late or extra trips, resulting in delayed mail, and also the dismantling of sorting machines ahead of the election. All told, the Postal Service successfully delivered more than 130 million ballots to and from voters during the general election. But by the time Christmas arrived, it had gotten so bad that more than a third of first-class mail was late. A dismal performance, even though DeJoy had backtracked on some of his changes by then, except what did they do with the sorting machines? They dismantled them, and in some cases destroyed the parts. At the holiday peak, tractor trailers chock full of mail were left idling outside some postal sorting facilities across the country because there was no room inside. Packages and letters piled up in distribution hubs. Delays grew by days and then weeks, and a number of factors contributed to the nightmare. Americans were using the Postal Service at an unprecedented level because of the pandemic. Overtime could not make up for the impact of postal workers' COVID-19 illnesses and quarantines. Commercial flights that transport mail operated on reduced schedules, and FedEx and UPS dumped packages on the Postal Service when they reached their limit. At Christmas time, you could barely move in the facility, said Scott Adams, local president of the American Postal Workers Union in Portland, Maine. Aisles were blocked with mail. Now, critics have called for DeJoy to be fired. Bill Pascrell Jr., a New Jersey Democrat, wants Biden to fire the entire Postal Service Board of Governors for what he called dereliction of duty. The Board of Governors, which selects the Postmaster General, is currently made up of Trump appointees. The vice chair resigned in protest over the Trump administration's actions. That leaves a chairperson, Robert Duncan, who is a former Republican National Committee chair, along with 3 other Republican members and 2 Democratic members. If Biden fills all vacancies, then Democratic members would hold a majority, though the board is officially bipartisan. No party may hold more than 5 seats on the 9-member board. The Postmaster General and Deputy Postmaster General vote on some, but not all, issues brought before the board. Diamondstein said the recent announcement of more than 10,000 more permanent jobs in distribution hubs is a down payment on addressing problems. DeJoy has come around to further changes to improve service and morale, he said. He's either going to do right by the people of the country, or he needs to go, Diamondstein said. Anonymous Reuters staff brings us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy River City Hash Mondays. U.S. Homeland Security Chief Alejandro Mayorkas, who last week became the first Latino and immigrant to hold the post, reaffirmed his resolve to fight domestic terrorism, one of the greatest threats to the United States. Mayorkas, who served as deputy secretary at the DHS under President Barack Obama, was sworn in after the deadly January 6 riot at the U.S. Capitol by supporters of outgoing Republican President Donald Trump. To see the insurrection, to see their horrific acts of January 6 were not only personally devastating, but that created in me a commitment to redouble our efforts to fight hate and to fight one of the greatest threats that we face currently on our homeland, which is the threat of domestic terrorism, Mayorkas told CNN in an interview that aired on Saturday evening. Now, I would say domestic terror is pretty much the purview of white nationalists. I know there's a few others there, but by and large, yeah, and they're pretty by and large, too. Have you looked at them? There's a lot of human growth hormone in that Big Mac and Whopper diet. Mayorkas also said the Biden administration was working with due urgency on efforts to end the Trump-era policy known as the Migrant Protection Protocols, which forced more than 65,000 asylum seekers back to Mexico to wait for U.S. immigration court hearings. We are looking at that as recently as earlier today, and that was on Saturday. The urgency of that also cannot be overstated, he said. When asked about recent hacks by Chinese and Russian groups of U.S. government computer systems, Mayorkas said the administration was working with Congress to see what additional funding could be provided to enhance the security of federal infrastructure and information systems, as well as through public-private partnerships. I would say that since the Russians were behind the secessionist movement back out here in the West, I would look into Russian involvement, planning, and money and influence in this current insurgency. It all seems a little too convenient to me. All right, let's get to our break. And when we get back from that break, we will go through weather from around the world. And we will finish up with the stories that we have curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. And we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Take Two Movie Review. I'm Kim Lowe. This week, not your granddad's Western. Paul Greengrass's new film, News of the World, is a Western for those who don't usually flock to Westerns. While there are nail-biting action scenes, the movie is essentially an unhurried drama about two damaged people trying to put their lives back together. The film centers around two characters. The first is Tom Hanks's Captain Jefferson Kyle Kidd, a former Confederate officer and publisher turned storyteller who visits towns in Texas delivering the news to paying audiences. Like a radio presenter before radio, Kidd ends his shows on an optimistic note, usually about the persistence of the human spirit. It's needed as much of the population is illiterate and still recovering from the Civil War. Notable in a vaguely contemporary way are his audience's reactions to real news. It's during one such trip that Kidd encounters 10-year-old Johanna, a German immigrant adopted by the Kiowa people after her family perished in an incident between the natives and settlers. Johanna is then orphaned a second time after another incident eliminates her adopted native family. Most of the film's action occurs as Kidd transports the girl to an aunt and uncle at the direction of the occupying forces. Johanna, played with few words by award-winning German child actress Helena Zengel, steals every scene she's in. Barely remembering her German family and not being fully Kiowan, she's a mess of fear, hurt, and distrust. The pair's epic journey past obstacles, natural and human, is an analog for Johanna's journey to find her place. Hanks is a natural here as her guide and protector, as fast with a gun as he is wise in his judgment. The acting in News of the World, combined with stunning set design and cinematography, make for a genuinely rewarding experience. This has been Take Two Movie Review. I'm Kim Lowe. Catch up with us at TakeTwoMovieReview.com and feed us back on our channel on YouTube.
This program is presented by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
The discovery of penicillin in 1928 by Alexander Fleming was one of the greatest scientific achievements of the 20th century. It's hard to imagine a world before the development of what many consider to be miracle drugs. However, just 90 years ago, antibiotics weren't available. Thanks to antibiotics, some common illnesses such as strep throat are now easily treated, whereas in the past they often led to serious complications. Antibiotics serve an important role in keeping you and your loved ones healthy, but it's important to remember that antibiotics only treat bacterial infections. Most common infections such as colds, flu, most sore throats, bronchitis, and many sinus and ear infections are caused by viruses and do not respond to antibiotic treatment. These infections can be overcome by simply treating the symptoms and letting the illness run its course. Unfortunately, antibiotics have often been overused, resulting in decreased effectiveness and an increase in antibiotic-resistant diseases. Antibiotic resistance, or the increased ability of bacteria to survive in the presence of antibiotics, has become a major public health threat that we all need to help fight. When a person takes antibiotics, they are at risk for possibly having a bad reaction to these drugs. Some side effects can be quite serious, or even life-threatening in the case of an allergic reaction or severe diarrhea. This is why it is very important to only use antibiotics when they are absolutely needed and not for viral infections. Talk to your healthcare professional about the best treatment for your illness. If it is caused by a virus, follow his or her recommendation for treating the symptoms. Learn more about appropriate antibiotic use and how to feel better when you don't need an antibiotic by visiting CDC's Get Smart Know When Antibiotics Work website at cdc.gov/getsmart/community.
For the most accurate health information, visit www.cdc.gov or call 1-800-CDC-INFO.
He seems sorry.
We very clearly told him not to look up there.
I'm honestly impressed that he was able to do it.
Right? What, did he balance on that big chair?
Yeah, I mean, I guess he'll just know what his gifts are this year.
I really thought we had hidden them well.
If they can find their presents, they can find a gun.
911, what is your emergency?
Every day, 8 kids and teens are unintentionally killed or injured by loaded and unlocked guns. Learn how to make your home safer at endfamilyfire.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council and End Family Fire.
Hi, I'm Tom Hartman, and since you're listening to netrootsradio.com, show your progressive side and go to the donate button on the bottom of the homepage. It's progressives like you who power Netroots Radio and keep the progressive message beaming everywhere 24 hours a day. Just go to our donate button at the bottom of netrootsradio.com. Thank you for keeping progressive radio at full power.
Is Marjorie Taylor Greene qualified to serve in the United States House of Representatives? I'm Bill Newman, and this is the Civil Liberties Minute. Marjorie Taylor Greene is the newly elected representative from Georgia's 14th Congressional District. Greene believes, among the plethora of her racist conspiracy-laden beliefs, that the deadliest and most destructive wildfire in California's history in 2018 was intentionally caused by rich Jews who had a laser beamed down from outer space to cause the fire. Greene also subscribes to crazy QAnon conspiracy theories and has insisted that the massacres at Sandy Hook Elementary School in 2012 and the Parkland School in 2018 were staged events created solely to undermine the rights of gun owners. The Constitution sets forth 3, but only 3, requirements to be elected to the House of Representatives. Be 25 years or older, be a citizen of the United States for 7 years or more, and live in the same state where the congressional district is located. That's it. Nothing more, nothing less, but nothing more. So the answer to the question, does Marjorie Taylor Greene meet the few, minimum, and minimal qualifications to be elected to the United States House of Representatives, actually is yes. What to do about her is a different question for another Civil Liberties Minute. The Civil Liberties Minute is made possible by the ACLU because freedom can't protect itself.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1919. That was the day copper miners in Butte, Montana went out on strike. Mine owners announced a $1 a day wage cut when copper prices slumped in the financial markets. Swayed by the power of the Seattle General Strike then in progress, miners associated with the Industrial Workers of the World and the Metal Mine Workers Union Local 800 formed their own Soldiers, Sailors, and Workers Council. They issued a call for a general strike. For days, area trade unionists honored picket lines, left their jobs, and held meetings to debate joining a general strike. The streetcar workers shut down public transportation for 5 days. Soldiers returning from the war helped to man the picket lines. The labor paper Butte Daily Bulletin reported the post-war economy had left returning war heroes penniless and working in dangerous mines. While solidarity was unanimous among workers, their unions had yet to pass formal resolutions. Immediately, Montana's Governor Sam V. Stewart called in the 44th Infantry to crush the strike. Infantrymen bayoneted 9 strikers when they tried to stop the anti-labor Butte Daily Post from being distributed. Spirits were high by the end of the first week as official voting began. Then the streetcar men went back to work, citing no grievances with their employer. Then the engineers followed. Finally, the IBEW caved. They worried the engineers would take their jobs as they had done in the 1917 strike. The IWW and Local 800 called off the strike, fearing continuation would be fatal. Though most of the troops were soon withdrawn, one company stayed to ensure labor peace at the local water and electric works. Butte would remain under federal military occupation until the end of 1920. Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. We always begin weather from around the world along the banks of the Rogue River and the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 35 degrees Fahrenheit, expecting a high in the mid-40s or so, maybe a notch higher than that, but maybe not. Generally cloudy throughout the day. Winds will be light and variable, and mostly cloudy skies overnight. Winds will remain light and variable with lows in the mid to low 30s, with partly cloudy skies tomorrow with highs in the low 50s. Winds light and variable. And it looks like we will have some rain coming in on Wednesday with a copious amount, maybe even a half an inch on Thursday, and rain and snow is in the offing as well. We'll see how that holds up as the week goes on. Confirmed coronavirus cases in Jackson County in the southern part of Oregon. Now, these are not final numbers because, as you know, the health department here in this county doesn't update over the weekend. So these are really after the show on Friday. So we are now at 7,673 cases with 105 confirmed deceased. That number will go up later today or early tomorrow. Pollen right outside the window here in Rogue River proper is rated at none. The air quality index for the region is good at 23 parts per million, and the daytime UV index is low at 2. Barometric pressure is holding steady at 30.07 inches. Visibility is at 7 miles, and relative humidity is at 90%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd of crowdsource from around the world. Okay, we'll clean that up before the week's over. I promise. I really do. London is 30 degrees with snow. Paris is 32 and cloudy with a threat of snow. Rome is 55 and mostly cloudy. Kyiv is 15 degrees with a light snow shower. Kabul is 48 degrees with smoke. They can't tell if there's any snow mixed in with it because it's all smoky. Hong Kong is 63 and mostly cloudy. Tokyo is 38 and clear. Sydney, Australia is 68 and cloudy. San Francisco, California is 45 degrees and mostly cloudy. And New York, New York is a very chilly 22 degrees Fahrenheit. But hey, you have sun. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by a crowd of crowdsourced weather stations that a crowd of crowdsourcers crowdsource from around the world. Anonymous staff at Reuters brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy Blue Moon Spirits Fridays. U.S. President Joe Biden's administration will re-engage with the United Nations Human Rights Council 3 years after former President Donald Trump withdrew over what his administration called bias against Israel and a lack of reform. Secretary of State Antony Blinken will announce today that the U.S. will return to the Geneva-based council as an observer, a senior State Department official said yesterday, Sunday. We intend to do so knowing that the most effective way to reform and improve the council is to engage with it in a principled fashion, the official said. We know that the council has the potential to be an important forum for those fighting tyranny and injustice around the world. Being present at the table, we seek to reform it and ensure it can live up to that potential, the official said. And the plan was first reported by the Associated Press. Trump, of course, we know he's a Republican whose America First agenda contributed to his decisions to withdraw from multiple international organizations and agreements, quit the Human Rights Council in 2018, halfway through its 3-year term over what it called chronic bias against Israel and a lack of reform. The 193-member UN General Assembly is due to elect new members to the council later this year. Members are elected for 3 years and cannot serve more than 2 consecutive terms. Candidates are elected by secret ballot in geographical groups to ensure even representation. The next session of the 47-member Geneva-based council is due to start later this month.
Je te donne, c'est mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer. Mes automnes, quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers.
Philip Pulela of Reuters brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the Chef's Table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Pope Francis has appointed 2 women to Vatican posts, previously held only by men in back-to-back moves, giving women more empowerment in the male-dominated Holy See. He appointed Nathalie Becart, a French member of the Xavier Missionary Sisters, on Saturday as co-undersecretary of the Synod of Bishops, a department that prepares major meetings of world bishops held every few years on a different topic. I should mention that I was part of the Xaviers when I went briefly to seminary school, because that's what one would do. Not necessarily with the Xaviers, but they are a teaching order after all. Now, the previous day, Francis named Italian magistrate Katia Sumeria as the first woman promoter of justice in the Vatican Courts of Appeal. Picart's position, effectively a joint number 2 spot, will give her the right to vote in the all-male assemblies, something many women and some bishops have called for. She is 52, relatively young by Vatican standards. And I gotta say, I'm getting so old, that seems pretty young to me, too. Women have participated as observers and consultants in past synods, but only synod fathers, including bishops, and specially appointed or elected male representatives could vote on final documents sent to the Pope. During a synod in 2018, more than 10,000 people signed a petition demanding women get the vote. A door has been opened. We will see what other steps can be taken in the future. Cardinal Mario Gretsch, the Synod Secretary General, told the official Vatican News website, while upholding the Church's tradition barring female priests, Francis has set up commissions to study the history of women deacons in the early centuries of the Catholic Church, responding to calls by women that they be allowed to take up the role today. Actually, before the Gospels were written, women were pretty much the leaders of the church. And then, 70 to 300 years later, women were pretty much written out and put into the subservient status where they exist today, until Pope at least elevated two to the Holy See. He also appointed women to the posts of Deputy Foreign Minister, Director of Vatican Museums, and the Deputy Head of the Vatican Press Office. Well, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day. But you do know Netroots Radio will broadcast on, and we'll meet up tomorrow for Tarrytown Chowder Tuesdays. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks. And we'll meet up here tomorrow, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théâtres, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair, t'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.